Okay, welcome everybody. Today we have Hannah B as our case presenter. All of you have been assigned questions, so we'll do that in the first phase. Just a few reminders. I really want us to try and stay on task. I know we can all be intrigued by the content of Hannah's case and want to do fact finding, but I will try and steer away from that as much as possible. And then the last reminder is just about the hand raising. For the last three phases, we'll raise our hand. I'll pick an order as they come up on my screen, and then we'll go through the three phases. Any questions before we start? Okay, so we can start with phase one. Let's see, Hannah W., if you want to start us off.
Sure. Hi, Hannah. What would you say are your best hopes for this consultation?
I think that my best hopes for this consultation would be to gain some kind of fresh perspective or insight from people who aren't directly involved in the situation and so loaded with it all the time. But yeah, maybe some solution focused brainstorming with my peers. So.
And quick follow-up, what do you think will be different if you get some good feedback or brainstorming, solution-focused brainstorming? What do you think would be different for you?
I think maybe I might not feel so overwhelmed with the content. I sort of feel like I've absorbed a little bit of my field educators' burnout with the subject. So maybe I'll just feel a little bit, have a fresher perspective.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Hannah. I think that's it for that question.
Okay, question two. Hi, Hannah. So I am just want to ask, what are your best hopes for your subject, for Nadia, in terms of her attitude and behaviors, and what are your best hopes for her?
So I think that my best hopes, or our best hopes at my placement for this client, would be that she can learn to accept herself and accept her disability status and not have so much resentment of herself or perfectionism about or focus on what she can't do. So maybe my best hope would be for her to have a little more self-compassion, but also to have compassion for others and to maybe build up her empathy and increase her skills of being respectful when she gets frustrated. And just kind of being open to new opportunities. I recognize that she's scared and anxious, and I relate to that, but we all have to learn how to manage that. So I think those are my best hopes, that she'll learn how to accept herself and focus on all the things she can do.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi.
So suppose, let's say your client does in fact believe in herself more, and you gain a fresh perspective on everything. What do you think would be different?
So I think she would I would hope that she would come to her brief counseling sessions weekly, kind of with a better attitude about herself, not kind of always talking about what didn't go well or what she was frustrated with, even though that's kind of what counseling can be for sometimes. But I would hope too that she would engage in her physical therapy and occupational therapy and just know that she's worth it, that she's and have some intrinsic motivation, like she's participating in her own growth to prevent regression, to prevent things being harder, like recognizing her responsibility and role now that she's getting a little bit older. I think.
Okay, what else?
Maybe I would not feel so nervous going into counseling sessions with her that she's going to yell at me if I say the wrong thing. Or maybe I wouldn't let that stop me so much. Maybe that's more on my end, kind of building up some resilience of that's not a problem, that might happen. How do I come back from that? Yeah.
What do you think Nadia would notice?
I would hope that she would like that her self-esteem might be a little bit bolstered, that she would feel more like, yeah, I'm disabled. Yeah, there's things I can't do. Yeah, it's hard, but there's a lot that she can do. Maybe she'd be better at more actively coming up with like positive self-talk to remind herself of. That's something we've been working on. And maybe she'd also like have an understanding for how her behavior makes other people feel. I would hope.
And others around you, especially your placement site, what would they notice once your best hopes are realized?
Hopefully, what is key is that her therapists and her teachers and the social worker would notice that she's being respectful and that she's actively in participating in her therapies and taking responsibility for her own health because she is capable of it to an extent, to a greater extent than other students. And I would hope that maybe her parents would notice that she's more capable than they give her credit.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi, Hannah. So on a scale from 1 to 10, where 10 stands for you meeting your goals with Nadia, where are you now, you think?
I think we're maybe at a 4.
Okay, what tells you that you are at a 4?
So we've been working on this for a while, for at least a few months. We've been trying to implement different techniques with Nadia, such as, practicing positive self-talk, affirmations, practicing like talking about being accepting of herself in counseling. I've been speaking with the other intern about how we can implement motivational interviewing to kind of like elicit her own, like what motivates her without, because right now for a 16-year-old, it's all adults telling you you need to do things. And I can understand why that's like why she has some rebellion against that, but we're trying to, yeah, sorry, I'm getting off task, but
Well, I
yes.
just wonder what, like you picked 4, why not 3? Like what makes her a 4, not a 3?
I see her making progress. Like last week when we talked in counseling about what motivates her, and then we tried to kind of shift the conversation, and she wanted to go back to talking about her motivations. So she does strike me as she's like reflective and self-aware and likes coming to counseling and better understanding her feelings. So I think that's a plus.
That's great. And then where do you want to be? If you're at a 4 now, where would you like to be with her by the end of your internship, maybe?
I think realistically, I'd like to get up to like maybe a 6 or a 7. I think that this is going to be a lifelong task for Nadia. And it's not solely up to me and the other green intern to, but if we can help spark the knowledge or spark the thought process, I'd be satisfied.
That's really hard. And so if you were to go up like a step or 2, what would be different, you think?
So I think Nadia would be actively participating in her therapies, like wearing her adaptive foot braces, for 30 minutes a day. We talk about that. So accountability with that, and that she'd be respectful towards others, towards her therapists, her teachers, understand that she can't talk back to them, and to be respectful towards her parents and how much they do for her. So.
Wow, that's great reflection.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in real quick. So Hannah, I know Elizabeth asked you about a scale, but how about in terms of you and your personal goals? So you talked a lot about like Nadia and what her goals are, but in terms of your work with her, what is your concept of the 1 to 10 scale of where you would like to be?
I feel, maybe this is me being self-critical, but I feel like I'm more at like a 3, maybe. Just because I go into counseling sessions with her kind of unsure whether or not I'm really working towards her goals or and it took me a long time to understand the function of the school-based counseling at School 84, that usually it's not like this. It's like group-based and like behavior modification. So I was a little confused to start, but I do think that I'm starting to, as I go to these interdisciplinary meetings and talk to her teachers, I'm gaining a better understanding of, and also building rapport with her and gaining her trust. So
Awesome.
maybe I'd make myself a 4.
Just in the interest of time, I'm going to have Hannah take the next question.
Okay, so there's a lot of really good stuff going on here, I think. But what is one thing that you are already doing that you feel like is on track towards meeting these goals that you've mentioned?
Yeah, so I think we're doing a lot of stuff. Like I said, we're kind of talking to her therapist, having meetings with her therapist, having meetings with her teacher. We already had a couple of kind of difficult discussions with her, or my field educator kind of took the reins on that. And kind of, instilled in her that she has to put effort in. We're trying to implement different therapeutic techniques, motivational interviewing, positive self-talk, journaling. So I think that's on track.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And in terms of the way that you are interacting with Nadia, what is something that you're doing that really kind of reinforces the trauma-informed care aspect of things?
Yeah, this I try to keep in mind and not just like absorb what feels like my field educator's annoyance. I'm trying to be aware of the fact that even though the professionals and teachers are frustrated with her, she's a 16-year-old girl, and I can relate to that. I can relate specifically, like the first time I spoke with her after I was like not too scared to, was to relate to her and say, I also struggle with anxiety. I also struggle with perfectionism and being hard on myself. And I think we have that in common. And so I'm just trying to just be empathetic for her emotions, even if they're not always coming out in a way that makes me feel good. So, yeah.
That's great. I think you've identified a lot of things that you're doing that are on track. So I think we can be good to move on to the next question. You're doing great.
This is a good part for this. This is our 2-minute warning. So Brittany, you can go ahead.
Okay. So I think Hannah made a good point. Like, you're doing a lot that's leading you towards your goals. What do you think that the client is already doing that's on track towards your goals for her?
Yeah, so she's doing the journaling, which I think is important. Although sometimes she says things like, it's okay if what I read in my journal is terrible. And I'm like, okay, just keep that to yourself. Yes, it's okay, I think. But she also has been, like, by her report, wearing her adaptive foot braces for 30 minutes a day, and participating in therapies.
Okay. I'll just let you go to the next question just for sake of time.
Thank you, Brittany.
Okay.
Hi, Hannah. So what do you believe is the next small step?
I think it might be good to work with my co-intern and work in supervision, talking about how to develop empathy in someone, because kind of my field educator mentioned that's something he'd like us to work on. So yeah, I'd like to investigate how to go about that with her, and maybe go into our next session with her with a plan.
Thank you.
Awesome. So if there's no more questions, we have about like 20 seconds left in this. We can move on, just making sure everybody's good. Okay, so now we're going to move into the wonderment phase. So Hannah, you can turn off your mic and your camera. And then if you can raise your hand if you have a wonderment, and I'll call on you as we go. Hannah W., you want to start?
Sure. So I wonder what support is available from the field placement for Hannah to identify specific strategies for sessions. I know that there was some mention of specific modalities that are being used. I have a feeling that Hannah might be doing a lot of digging on her own. I just wonder what whether the field placement is giving those strategies as well.
Brittany?
I was wondering how Hannah and her other intern can work together towards their goals of feeling more confident in working with this client in terms of the way that her behaviors affect them. And I wonder if maybe they can brainstorm on how it makes them feel as individuals, and how they can show up more skillfully when those things occur.
Just real quick, gonna throw this out there. Let's wonder what, wonder when, wonder how, but not wonder if. Tyler, you can go ahead if you want to go.
Okay. I wonder what other interventions or techniques her supervisor may have done in situations like this in the past.
Brittany, do you have another one? Or okay, Elizabeth, you can go ahead.
So I wonder what kind of role models or books that Nadia could read to give her some inspiration, maybe outside of the school and outside of herself. It doesn't sound like at school she has, or it doesn't sound like in school she has a whole lot of other disabled people. And really, she has an important story to tell. So I love the journaling. I wonder what kind of audience she might be able to have for that. If she could like publish something and maybe read aloud. There's so many things, maybe talking to a special ed teacher. Maybe there's she could have a consult with a special ed teacher at school to give her some ideas of how do you work with kids who are different. So or maybe there's a support group that this girl could actually start where she's with other people who are different and they're sharing. Maybe she could even be in a situation somehow where she's helping someone else. She has this tenacity that Hannah has described. And I wonder if she's getting enough self-praise for that, because there's kids with more abilities and more skills that that don't have that.
Mm-hmm. Brittany and Hannah, if you're okay, I'm just going to jump in real quick. I was wondering how Hannah is processing kind of having a supervisor and a role model that seems to have given up on Nadia, like how that makes her feel and how she's dealing with those emotions. Hannah, and then Brittany, you can go.
I was wondering something similar of, whether Hannah has spent any time processing or talking about the experiences of, Nadia kind of rejecting her efforts at times. I know that can be really, sneaky type of emotional pain when a client is, not really wanting to work with you.
So yeah, I was wondering something similar to Elizabeth. Just I wonder how the client would feel seeing some role models that have overcome the emotional setbacks. And I wonder also with Hannah how she can. I wonder how implementing boundaries in terms of emotional boundaries would affect her positively and working with this client. Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler, go ahead.
I wonder how Hannah B has interacted with other people who aren't as able-bodied as us are. Like, I wonder how in times past she may have interacted with someone else who may be disabled, or even not just physically disabled, maybe mentally disabled as well. Whether or not those skills can be used in this particular case as well.
I was wondering too how exacerbated Nadia's symptoms are right now in terms of not feeling like she fits in due to her age developmentally. I know this is a big time, like she could have started driving if she was of able-bodied. And so I'm wondering what Nadia was like previously and how her symptoms and emotions have progressed as she is realizing she can't do more things and reaching those developmental goals as you age. Oh, Tyler and then Elizabeth, we'll do those two.
I wonder what motivation techniques can be used on Nadia to motivate her into wanting to actually complete this and see it through.
And I was wondering, like, how a movie just like Finding Nemo, where he calls his fin his lucky fin, you know, if we could use some humor would, you know, maybe there's a way to infuse humor into the situation about her foot, you know, decorate it with her brace with funny things, or in a way to make it a little bit more fun and own it, you know, like, I don't know, proudly.
Okay, if we're good, everybody's good. Moving on, Hannah, you can turn your camera on and come back to the group. So now we're gonna move to the compliment phase. We'll do about 2 compliments each. So if we wanna just do the hand raising thing again, I'll call and we'll go from there. Okay, Tyler and then Hannah W.
Hannah B, I like very much how you're definitely like on this and emotionally invested and wanting to see it through. And I also like how you're not afraid to actually question the functions of the organization, going through and pointing out stuff that could be improved or pointing out issues. It's not easy to admit, but I appreciate how you brought that to the forefront.
Tyler?
I was going to say I'm really impressed, Hannah, with your compassion and your willingness to put yourself in Nadia's shoes in terms of her developmental stage, and to be vulnerable with your own experiences related to that stuff. I think that a lot of people wouldn't know to do that or be comfortable doing that.
Brittany?
Yeah, I had a similar compliment. I think that it takes a lot to self-disclose things like that, and I really commend you for doing that. I'm sure it made her feel much more comfortable. And also, I just really commend you for bringing in skills that we've been learning to this client specifically, and finding ways to help her become emotionally better, and not just you know, take the complaints and internalize them yourself, but actually want to help this client become more emotionally capable. I think that's really huge. And also with not taking on the burnout of you know, the person, of the supervisor, I think that that's really difficult to do, and you still being willing to like bring in fresh ideas and new perspectives to this client is probably helping her so much. So that's great.
Yeah, I agree
Thanks,
with
Brittany.
Brittany. I was gonna say, I appreciate how much research and time and thought you've put into delivering best practices for Nadia to show some progress. And although she might not show it, I'm sure that they're working. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I also commend you, Hannah, because that's a tough role that you're in, with a supervisor sort of disclosing that he's at his wit's end with this girl, and that's a lot of responsibility for you to put on her, for him to put on you, when you've you know, with the history of this student. But I think you've got some really good ideas, and you know that something is got to be done that's different. And I can hear that when you're talking, that you're ready to take some risks and try some new things. And you're doing an amazing job, because it would be one thing to just kind of be placid about it, but you're ready to try some new things, and you're asking all these great questions. So great job.
Brittany, do you have another one? No, it's okay. So if everybody's good with moving on from the compliment phase, we'll go to the debriefing phase. So Hannah, how was this process for you?
This was really interesting. Thank you all for your compliments. I was sort of nervous to talk about this issue. Oh wait, I'm not supposed to talk about the issue. This process was really structured, but I liked that. I don't know. I thought it was. I don't know. I thought it was good. I thought that I learned a lot, and you guys made me feel like I'm on the right path, which I had wondered about.
Great, awesome. And then for the group, we'll do the hand raising thing again, but this is kind of a little less informal. And just so you guys know, we have about 3 minutes. So what do you guys think worked well today? I know we changed our process a little bit from when Hannah was the facilitator. So what do you think worked well? What do you think we should change for next group? Yeah, Hannah B.
I didn't say this before, but I think the hand raising, that was a great idea. And also kind of the 2-minute warning and how you're kind of keeping time. So these have all been improvements that I will take with me.
Oh my gosh, everybody just raise their hands at once. Okay, so Tyler, Elizabeth, Brittany, and then Hannah W. And then after that, we'll wrap up.
I like how even before this process, this group even started, a lot of pre-planning went into effect. Everyone was on the same page. Everyone knew what they were doing, and it definitely made this process go a lot faster, which is good because I have to facilitate next week.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I think that the process did a good job at, focusing Hannah on small steps, where I think sometimes a job, when you're working with a student who's very frustrating and you've got all this negativity in the air, it's hard to know what's the next right step. So I like how the scaling, facilitated Hannah saying exactly what it would look like for her to be going up in a few numbers and what it would need to get there. And I thought that was like what it would look like, what other people would notice about it. So I thought that part of the process was very nice, helpful.
Yeah, I thought that it was really organized. I thought we did a good job with that. I think the only thing that I would say on the other spectrum is making sure during the wonderment phase that we don't get too going into suggestions. I don't think that that's necessarily the point, and I think we just have to make sure that we're being aware of that, because it goes into that fact finding and trying to solve Hannah's problem. So that's it.
Right. Good point, Brittany. Hannah W., did you want to add something, or are you good?
I'm good. Yeah, I think it went well.
Perfect. Okay, well, that ends today's group. Thank you, everybody, for your participation, and I will see you next week.